if he is in fact healthy enough to play, what kind of player can he be and what can he do for the Bulls on the floor? And can he do a lot of those same things that you were just discussing about on the other side? And I thought it was interesting. I think it was Julia Poe of the Trib who asked him that question about, like, have you noticed any differences this week in training camp about what you said at Media Day of adjusting your game that will maybe not be as athletic and physical of a game as, you know, as it was pre-injuries? And he said slight differences. Some of the more physical things like sliding on defense, getting over screens, I've noticed is a little bit slower. And so I need to play the game a lot smarter. And that's really what I have to focus on. So leaning a bit more on his experience, his wealth of basketball IQ to maybe try and make up for some of the fact that he might not be as quick of a defender as the one that we saw before.
Well, right. And he said, like, basically right away, like, he was pretty gassed coming off some of those scrimmages. Like, you can't really replicate 5-on-5 basketball by yourself shooting in the gym or whatever it may be. So I think the, like, intensity and just, like, the conditioning is kind of, there's a ways to go there. Obviously the strengthening in his leg, that was another thing that he said, just in terms of, like, getting his shot right and making sure that he's got enough lift behind his jump shot, which was obviously such a dangerous part of his game. And to me, I said this to him, like, one of the things that I thought made him such a special player was his ability to read the game a step or two ahead, to position himself defensively in a place where he could make a play by understanding what the offense was going to do a step ahead. And I think you can see that on the offensive end too, like finding guys before they got passing guys open, right? Mm-hmm. We talk about the difference between, like, finding the open man and passing a guy open. Lonzo was a guy that was, like, creating advantages just through his court vision.
Right.
And what does that all come down to? Obviously you have elite athleticism there, elite length, the ability to, like, get tip-aways and things like that. That's all just, like, fighting over screens, the physical stuff that he's talking about. But really, it's like the basketball IQ of understanding where to be and where to make those plays and how to do it. And that was something that I think made Lonzo so special. And so I asked him, like, having missed so much time, is, like, the speed of the game, has that caught up to you at all? Mm-hmm. And he was like, no, like, I've been playing since I was 6. Like, I still have the same IQ. I still see the game the same way. And I think that even if he's not able to be, like, you don't think of him as, like, this explosive above the rim, dunking, running, jumping athlete, but, like, he was able to just get wherever he needed to be on the court and get himself back into plays on defense. Billy spent a ton of time talking about how critical both he and Caruso playing off of each other were defensively for those 40 some odd games. But I think as long as he's still got that basketball IQ, the shooting, the playmaking, the passing, all that stuff is going to be there. And I think he's still going to be a great connective piece, even if he's out there for, 5 minutes total this season. I think you're still going to see that just because of how brilliant and, he's a basketball genius.
Right. Yeah. So he said he needed to lean on that, and Billy echoed those same kind of sentiments. Billy said today after practice, this was in your write-up, check it out, ALLCITY.com after the episode, that they pushed him further today and that Lonzo looked good moving around. It was encouraging. Billy said of Lonzo, I think timing-wise, he'll get back as he plays more 5-on-5, mentioning the conditioning that you were just talking about, Goat. He said he's still, in my opinion, incredibly effective because of his IQ. As he finds that rhythm and time, the way he plays, he's got a really, really good feel. But he said he was happy to see that Lonzo could play as much 5-on-5 as he did today and throughout this week. So, again, still clearly trying to get his legs back under him because this has been a long, long layoff. How many days, Goat? Nearly 1,000?
998 from January 14th, 2022 until October 23rd, 2024, when the Bulls open up the season in New Orleans.
That is a long time to not have the legs of someone who is in mid-NBA season form conditioning-wise.
Yeah. And I think he knows that, and that's why it's, like, refreshing to hear both Billy and Lonzo talk about, like, taking this thing slow. And Billy, again, brought up this concept of, like, yeah, we want him to be out there and we want to see what he looks like, and we're going to take in all this information that they're getting with these, like, wearables and things that he's got going on in terms of, monitoring his workload and just the strain that's on his body. But Billy said, how can we create a role for him where there's some consistency there? And it's not just for this year, but he can continue on his career. And I think that is just really admirable from the Bulls' perspective. Like, he's an expiring contract. He is, as the Bulls change directions here and build a little bit younger. I think it would be strange if the Bulls were like really factoring him in as a big part of their future plans. And so to be thinking about it from that perspective of like, let's put this guy in the best position to succeed. I think that's just a nice sign from the Bulls and from Lonzo, who is clearly like thinking about taking it day by day, but also like, I think through this whole thing, like his love of basketball very much shines through, and just like the perseverance and persistence that he's had to fight through 3 separate surgeries. So I think thinking longer term and thinking bigger picture about this can kind of help them build a plan forward so that they can understand how to put him in a role where he can be successful this year, but also, you know, put himself in a position to get another contract after this.
Right. And speaking of that, months behind in the comments said, get Lonzo healthy and let him play and then trade him, as far as like what comes next. And you were saying it's not exactly like the Bulls are envisioning Lonzo being a piece as part of their long-term plans beyond the season.
They're like saying there's no chance, but I think they've like, whereas last year or maybe 2 years ago, they like went into the season hoping that at some point he would get back.
Right.
Now I think they're kind of, they signed Josh Giddey, and in that tweet, Woj said
a replacement for Lonzo Ball. Exactly. So that being the case, and you know, Big Dave has talked about that many times too. Like, hey, that's like best case scenario. Lonzo gets out there and plays, proves that he's healthy. Maybe he doesn't play back-to-backs, and maybe he's not playing 30 minutes a night. But a vet who's got a great mind for the game, a great skill set on both sides of the ball, on an expiring deal, who some playoff-bound team might see as a piece that they would love to add to their bench rotation down the stretch and into the playoffs. I think that is a feasible thing if he proves he's healthy. But when Billy is talking about finding consistency with Lonzo's role, as you were just mentioning, that makes me curious about the no back-to-backs thing. And less so minutes restriction, but if Billy is trying to find what works best for his rotation out of the gate this season, and Lonzo is a part of that, but not always a part of that because they're trying to be cautious with how much they're easing him back into this action, do you see that as a potential problem of a challenge to Billy and a challenge to the other players whose roles are fluctuating on a nightly basis, whether it's a night where, hey, Lonzo's got the green light, or it's a night where Lonzo has the red light?
Well, I think, and that's why they're going to be pretty conservative with it. Like, this doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be out there for 25, 30 minutes a night. Maybe he's playing for like one stint in each half, and it's like a 6 to 8 minute long stint, and that's it. And, you know, I think the other thing is like, one, everybody in the world is rooting for him. Nobody in the world on this team, in the front office, any fan, anybody who's ever heard of the NBA is not rooting for Lonzo Ball to come back and play. So I don't think it would be problematic from that perspective. And then I also think like part of the reason why you keep some veterans around when you're doing sort of a soft rebuild the way the Bulls are right now is you want guys that can help make life easier for them. And Lonzo, with his passing and his vision and his defense, I think he can still help guys. The way he spaces the floor, creating more room on the court for guys to drive. I think if he's even out there at all, I don't think it's going to be a distraction. I think it'll be helpful, I think, even for a lot of the younger guys. And then to your point, I mean, maybe whether he is traded as, you know, a player that can really help a team for a playoff run, or if it's just, you know, the Bulls take this opportunity with a $20 million expiring contract to take in some longer term money. Let's say they get a guy, you know, for similar money or $25 million a year. They can take in a little bit more over 2 or 3 years. Now you get a pick to do that. And now you're putting yourself in a better position as you rebuild this thing forward.
We all silly like the mayor.